Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. The clock on the wall says 3 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with today's session of Bloomerang Academy. This is an intermediate level class that we've actually, I think it's been maybe been referenced in the past as optimizing your acknowledgement process or saying thank you quickly and well. So actually, this is Bloomerang Academy. We've been offering these hour-long classes for about 4 years here at Bloomerang, maybe 5. And this was the actually very first class that we started teaching. As time has gone by and our new features have been added and our customers have become more and more sophisticated and hit us with more and more how do you do this, we've actually split this class up into both an intermediate class and an advanced class. So everything I'm going to show you, I'm going even while considering this our intermediate class, I'm going to give you some sneak previews of the stuff that is the really high-end, the stuff that the folks that are using Bloomerang at the highest level and want dozens of different possible acknowledgement letters can all use. Now, this is me, and this is my email address, ron.newlin@bloomerang.co. That is, in fact, correct. It's not a typo. It's not .com. It is .co. If you're watching this later as a recorded session on YouTube, do jot down my email address. I'll be happy, and send me an email afterwards. I'll be happy to send you a copy of the notes. So, kind of what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about creating a workflow schedule within your office, and a lot of what this class, a lot of Bloomerang customers, and particularly people watching intermediate classes, you may, in most cases, you've got a few people, maybe even one person in your office wearing multiple hats. So we're going to be talking here about kind of a simplified system for those of you who don't have multiple different people with redundancies and backups so everything gets done every day. Most of us don't live in that perfect world. So we're going to talk about a recommended workflow schedule, which is going to involve first of all, even if you can't get thank you letters out every day, and like I said, even if, who does? But certainly, that's one thing you really do want to get today is to every day, almost every day, is a daily transaction report. You may not get your letters out every day, but you really do want to make sure that you're at least letting the folks in your organization that need to know what gifts came in yesterday know that on a daily basis. We'll build that report. Then I'm going to demonstrate the most basic acknowledgement letter in Bloomerang. It's a template that comes preloaded into Bloomerang, and if all or even most of your donations that come in are actual outright donations and not pledges or in-kind donations or memorial gifts or any of those complicated things, but it's just an outright check, you may find that our most basic template meets most of your needs. So we're going to start with that, and we're going to go from that and also build a email acknowledgement. The same filters, the same language, the same plug-it-in fields that work for a letter also work for email, and we can talk about how to do this as quickly as possible, as cost-effectively as possible. You may want to thank everybody that you can by email, and then go back and only spend the printing and postage and the time that goes into print letters on the people that you couldn't reach by email because you don't have an email address or for some various other reason. Having done that, then I'm going to point out all the reasons that those simple, basic things don't work. I'm going to mess with your heads, laugh out loud. But then what I'm going to do is move on to the intermediate portion of this class. We're going to create a single letter that contains multiple fields in a footer that allows you to have the same letter address virtually every possible type of transaction that came in this week without having some awkward language or some zero amounts in the letter. Having done that, then at the very end, I'm going to spend a little bit of time demonstrating in the advanced class, and this is actually part of what you're going to see today. Many of you may already have multiple thank you letters already created. Maybe they're not every possible scenario, but you've got more than one. And essentially what we do in the advanced version of this class is kind of go through every imaginable thank you letter and build the filters for a different letter for every type of gift. I'm not going to be able in today's class. We don't have time to build all of those, but we'll preview a couple of them, and I'll bet you'll be able to kind of figure out from the couple of things we demonstrate how you might want to add some others like this for your own purposes. So we talk first. Before we jump into Bloomerang, most of this class today you're going to be watching me build things in Bloomerang. You're not just watching PowerPoint slides all day today, but for a couple more minutes, I'm going to go through a couple more slides here where we talk about having a workflow plan in your office. And this is created, again, not for the really top-notch organizations that have multiple people that back each other up when somebody's on vacation. But even the smallest of organizations, we really think the things we would recommend that you do is try to open the mail every day. And by every day, I mean almost every day. There's certainly going to be somebody gets sick, or you've got a special event where it's all hands on deck. It's not going to happen it's not going to happen 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year. But as a general rule, every day, even if you don't get letters printed, open the mail and sort out the checks from the other mail. And if at all possible, if the mail comes sometime between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., sometime between between that time and the end of the day, get your gifts entered manually into Bloomerang. And that's enough for today. First thing the next morning, run a daily transaction report, which I'm going to show you next. The reason I suggest doing that the first thing the next morning is because what this will do is you can run a transaction report filtered for transaction where date is yesterday, and that's going to catch online gifts that came in the previous evening. So if you get all this stuff done by 5 and you run a report and everybody's gone for the day, and then that night 3 gifts come in online, then the report is given to people the next morning missed those 3 gifts. So that's kind of why our best case scenario for most organizations is enter your gifts by the end of the day, run the report the first thing the next morning, and that's going to catch the online gifts that came in the night before. And then you can do multiple different things. You can print that report out by exporting it to Excel and hand it out around the office. You can save it as an Excel file and email it to everybody, or you can just actually send if everybody in your office has their own Bloomerang account, they just know that you've done this first thing in the morning, and as part of their morning firing up, they open up the daily transaction report, and boom, there it is. That allows everybody in the office that's involved in the thank you process to at least see every gift that came in yesterday. Because, if a whole bunch of your gifts are $25, $50, wonderful, that's great. Those people are not necessarily going to get a thank you call or certainly letter within 24 hours. But for those people that really is somebody that you don't want to let 3 or 4 days go by without a thank you letter, everybody in the office knows they got a gift. So a gift that comes in from a board member, a gift from a major donor that one of your executives have been cultivating, you got the opportunity for that person to immediately, within 24 hours of the gift, pick up the phone and give them a thank you call, or send them an email, BCC to Bloomerang, and that way they've got an interaction in Bloomerang saying that they were thanked immediately, and then you're still going to catch them later in the week Because with this process, and again, this is a process for those of you who don't have multiple redundancies and a backup to a backup, so the letters go out every day. Hardly anybody is in that fortunate a situation. For the rest of us, once a week, maybe twice a week, but certainly once a week, let's set aside block of time where we generate all of the letters that came in since the previous week or since the last time you generated letters. We'll generate the emails and the letters, and in the case of the letters, you'll download, in addition to downloading a PDF of all those letters, you'll download a CSV file, which is what you can use to do the mail merge for printing envelopes or printing the labels. That's all one step, and we'll go through that process here. Send the letters to the printer. Take the CSV file and use that to run either labels or envelopes, whichever you prefer. If it's labels, put the labels on the envelopes. You've got them sitting there. They're going to all run in the same order as the letters, so you don't have to worry about resorting them. Then the person who collect the letters back from the signer, photocopy them if that's necessary. Typically in Bloomerang, we don't think you need to photocopy every letter because we're going to save a copy of it, unless you've got a situation here where the person signing the letter put a very important personal note on it, and you really want the record not only to have your record to not only be a copy of the letter itself, but you want to save the handwritten note. Then in that case, you may want to photocopy that letter or scan it in. Otherwise, you're just going to go ahead and fold, stuff, seal, stamp the letters. And then, like the kinks, we're back where we started, and here we go round again. And we repeat the process daily for the gift entry and weekly or twice weekly for the acknowledgement processing. Now, we will get out of the boring old slides and into Bloomerang. So this is my sample Bloomerang database. Most of the people in here, and all of the donations, are imaginary. So what I've done in, to get ready for this class is I've added some random gifts from imaginary people today. And I'm going to pretend that that I've opened the mail and entered all of the gifts from yesterday, and any of the gifts that came in online are now in here, and it's time for me to run my daily transaction report. So I'll create a report. You don't have to create this every day. You'll create it once, and then you'll always have it. It's a new report from scratch. It's a transaction report. Here's something I've got. The dates for this are not going to be right. So right now I've got a transaction filter or transaction report with no filters. That means this report's got all 2,900 transactions in my database in reverse chronological order. I don't want them all. I want only ones that have a date, where the date is during. Now, for this to be a daily transaction report, you would just say date is during yesterday. Not before today, because that's everything before today. We only want yesterday. Except on Mondays, when you would want to say date is between, and then you would put in the date of Saturday morning. So if we were doing this past Monday, where it would start with date was 10/24 or 10/25, 2019 to yesterday. But as a general rule, what we're going to be doing here is creating a report where the filter is transaction date is yesterday, during yesterday. during. Now when I do this right at the moment, I'm getting no results. Because I filled this database up on Tuesday with for some things for the class I taught on Tuesday, and then I forgot to change the dates on them. So what we're going to really do for the purposes of this training, I'm going to go ahead and change, instead of saying date is during yesterday, I'm going to make this date is during this week. And now I'm getting everything that I've entered into my database this week. I've got 9 transactions that were booked this week. This would be the report that right now it's a transaction report, so all it's got is date, name, amount. The type of donation, what you can see here, some of these are donations, some of them are recurring donations payments, some of them are pledges, and some of them are pledge payments, and some of them are various funds. What this doesn't do for us, however, is the purpose of this is for us to distribute it to everybody else in the organization who might be making a thank you call. We're missing a couple of things. So what I'm going to do is add some columns to this. The transaction here belongs to a constituent. How do you get constituent-based information like account number and address and phone number into a transaction report? You filter or you add a column for transaction belongs to a constituent, and that's going to bring up a whole new nest of options where we can say, I want, this is for, by and large, this is for people to make phone calls. So I want the phone number as a column. I want the email address. Transaction belongs to a constituent, where the email address is a column to add. And maybe some of these people are going to want handwritten notes. And so I will go ahead and say the transaction belongs to a constituent who has an address, and I want, for the benefit of the person signing, hand addressing a handwritten note, I want them to have the street and the city and the state and the zip. And I can add all those columns. And this is all because this is a transaction report, because we want people to we want to see every transaction that came in the date range. But we're adding these columns to this report because this is for the benefit of distributing around the office, so anybody that should get a phone call or an email or a handwritten note before you get around to generating the thank you letters, which you're only going to do once or twice a week, they get thanked within 24 hours for those special people that need it, and everybody else is going to get thanked within 3 to 6 days. Yeah, okay, Tracy, can you add columns to household rather than constituent information? Well, what you're going to want to do here would be, you would, well, the email address and the phone number is going to be specific to the individual whose gift, who received, the person who made the gift. What we can do is add one more column for the transaction belongs to a constituent, where the household name, if they're in a household, where we've got a column for the household name. So that would allow the person who's writing a handwritten notes to make sure that all my examples here, I've been binge watching Boston Legal, and so all of these people are from Boston Legal, and God, none of them are married, or at least not to each other. So, but essentially what would happen here would, that would create a situation where this report is going to tell the person making the calls, yeah, Alan made the gift. Here's Alan's telephone number. Here's Alan's email address. But if they're writing a handwritten note, we've got a column for the household name. So if they were in a household, you'd be able to have this go to Alan and his spouse, as rather than than just Alan. That's actually a really good question, Tracy. Kind of deep. Kind of high-level stuff, but good question. So that's so that's the daily transaction report. Now, of course, you're going to change this as you set this up. Instead of date as this week, it's going to be date as yesterday, except on Monday, where you're going to change it to date is between, and then whatever Saturday's date is and what today's date is. I'll go ahead and just save this. Everything I save, when I'm working on a bunch of things, I will start everything with either the letter A or the letter Z. So it's at the top of my alphabetical list or at the bottom of my alphabetical list. And if I'm going to be opening several reports or several letters, one after another, it's useful this way to have them all grouped together, and I can find them at the top or the bottom of my alphabetical list. So I will just call this my daily, A, daily transaction report. So we've done that we've gotten the mail, the gifts entered by the end of the day. The next morning, we've run this report so we catch the gifts that came in online the night before. We've distributed this to everybody so that everybody who wants to make sure they made a phone call to the special people get that done. You're maybe not going to come back to gift acknowledgement every single day. You run the report first thing in the morning, you distribute it. That may be all you do with acknowledgement letters that day. You've got a work schedule set up where you do thank you letters, maybe all day or as long as it takes every Wednesday. Or maybe you do it Tuesday and Friday. You're getting them out twice a week, but you're in a situation where it's not possible to get everything out every day. Set up the next step as something that happens once or twice a week. So the next thing I want to show you is the very simplest way to send a thank you letter in Bloomerang. And it works really well for those cases that are outright donations. So the fourth logo down on the left-hand side is letters. If we were to create a new letter from scratch, this letter would be, the first question is, how are we filtering our audience? Well, what we're looking for is we're looking to find specific transactions to acknowledge. So we're going to choose the middle tab here. I'm going to call this my A, basic acknowledgement. The purpose of which is acknowledgement. It's not receipt. This is Bloomerang speak. You can use your own language internally however you want to, but when you're in Bloomerang, save the word receipt for when you're talking about your year-end receipt you'll do in January, where you send your donors a letter with a table in it that gives them an itemized list of all their gifts that were tax deductible from the previous year. In terms of a thank you that goes out almost immediately after the gift, we call that an acknowledgement. Typically, you're going to want this running one per household, just like Tracy's question. This way, the letter that you're generating as a letter is going to go to Mr. and Mrs. or to both members of the household. And actually, we've got this set up so these two boxes down here are gray right now. And right now, if we click this and turn it green, that means we will allow bad addresses, which means some of these letters, if you've got some people in here that you have an email address for but not a mailing address for, when you run the letters, they're going to get one. But then you can't mail it, so you've wasted postage, or at least printing. So typically leave that turned off. Blank merge fields is something that actually I'm going to go ahead and I'll show you why here in a sec. I'm going to go ahead and say, well, let's allow that, and we'll show you why in a minute. So now we're going to go ahead and go to next. So here is the template that shows up. You've got boilerplate language in here. It's a plain white piece of paper with your return address in it. And then the gray fields here, I mean, these are Bloomerang fields. We're going to grab that data and populate this letter with the data for the transactions that we're thanking. So it's preset to say thank you for your amount donation that you made on date. You can tweak some of these things around. One of the most common things you may want to do here is if you've got your own letterhead and you're sticking letterhead in the printer, you don't necessarily want your return address in the letter in addition to it being on letterhead. So just highlight that and delete it. And then maybe what we can do here is we go to page settings and change the top margin. Scroll this down here and update. And this will allow you to run this on pre-printed letterhead. Or maybe your pre-printed letterhead has your board members' names down the side. And so you'll change the margin over here. Or go back to our standard page settings. You might even want to put your cursor at the top of the page and use the Insert Image feature and put your own letterhead into Bloomerang. So Bloomerang lets you store all kinds of images that you can use over and over again. I'm going to go ahead and select this Bloomerang Academy logo I've got. Oh, it's way too big. Well, I'll just grab the corner, shrink it down, center it. And so now I've printed my own letterhead on my letter. I don't have to worry about what paper's in the printer. I can just leave white paper in the printer, and I can, when I'm doing my thank you letters, I'm going to have my own. They're just going to generate my logo. Particularly, if I've got a nice grayscale letter, or if I've got a color printer, this will just generate my logo at the top of the page. But it's going to automatically go to the recipient of the right letters. Who gets the right letters? Well, we go to find that out. We go up here to filters. So right now, without any filters except the default ones, we don't thank people for soft credits, and we don't thank people who are deceased or inactive or have said, please don't wait postage on me. Those are all default exclusions, although you can get rid of them if you want to. Those are just the defaults. But you don't want to send a letter. A letter with no filters is going to generate for every gift in your database. So you're never going to want that. Never. What you want, though, is transaction. We want only transactions where the date is. And here's where so you're doing this once a week and or twice a week. Here's where it's going to be useful to say, let's just say I only want transactions from, let's say the last 7 days or the last 8 days, because I'm running this letter every week, maybe twice a week. But I only want the transactions that have come in the last 8 days. There's 10 of them. But I also only want the transactions where the acknowledgement status is no. So now I'm down to 9. So I've got 9 transactions that have come in the last 8 days where the acknowledgement status is no. And here are who those people are. And you can see most of these dates are just this week. And these are all the people from Boston Legal, plus I've got Darth Vader from the Star Wars universe and Steve Rogers from the Marvel universe, because that's where I get all of my ideas. I can't come up with my own ideas. Charlie's question, personalizing individual letters. Yeah, actually, that's a good timely question. We can get almost straight to that from here. So, what you're going to do, so the next step here would be to save this and preview it, and now it's going to say, we found 9 transactions, but we're skipping 8 households. Why are we skipping these 8 households? Because they have bad because they have bad addresses. Because all of my addresses are fake, and Bloomerang can guess that. So let me back up a step here. Make changes to the letter. That was under the Details tab. We're going to allow bad addresses. And the only reason I'm doing this is because I've used fake people in here, and Bloomerang doesn't recognize the addresses that I'm using. So let's change that. We'll save that. Save and preview. With that change now, 9 transactions, 9 households, 9 letters. And we would go ahead now and hit run, where we got 2 choices. We can actually generate the letters, which will not only create a PDF that we can download, it will also create a CSV file with the addresses that we can generate labels from, or we can just do a preview, do a test. Actually, so Charlie's got a question about personalizing these letters, and I guess I'm not ready to do that. I want to wait 5 more minutes to show you how to do that, because I want to talk about something else. 2 other things first. First is, okay, so that's the most simple way to do thank you letters. It works really well if all of your donations are outright donations. But what if somebody is making a pledge? They've not given you the money yet. So you may not want to say, you want a different letter. You want the letter to acknowledge that it's just a pledge, or not just a pledge, but that it's not been paid yet. Or maybe they are making a pledge payment on an existing pledge, and you want the thank you letter to acknowledge that you've received the payment and that you're not just throwing this in the bank without deducting it from their balance due on their pledge. Or say it's an in-kind gift and the amount is 0. Or say it's a gift in memory of someone, and they read this letter and there's nothing on here that says that you remember, that you recognize it was in memory of. All those reasons. Yeah, and Tracy's Tracy's preempted by the point here. Yeah, the reason that as soon as you generate an acknowledgement letter in Bloomerang or an acknowledgement email in Bloomerang, you're going to flip the flag on that transaction from no to yes. And we'll demonstrate how that works before we're done here. But I've just been kind of walking through some of the examples of some of the reasons why this simplest letter works great if all of your letters are outright donations. But if they're more complicated than that, yes, Tracy, yeah, when you create acknowledgement as the purpose, that's what's going to trigger that flipping of the flag. Again, we've created a letter here, works great for an outright donation, but it's not going to necessarily work for a pledge or an in-kind donation or any kind of variety of other things. Really quickly, before we move on to the solution to this, I promised I also want to show the same thing works for a email. I'm not going to run the letter yet. I'm going to go ahead and cancel, get out of this one. I'm going to go to emails. I'm going to create a basic acknowledgement template. I've already got one here. Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, this is one. Okay. So I've created a basic acknowledgement template. I'm going to go ahead and start from scratch anyway. We'll start from scratch. It's a new transaction-based email, the name of which is a basic acknowledgement, the purpose of which is acknowledgement, not receipt. That's how Bloomerang is going to know to flip that flag. It's going to go to anybody who wants anything. We're going to allow blank merge fields. And it will just say, thanks from Ron at Bloomerang. This has got to be somebody in your organization. You choose a layout. I always do one-column layouts because people read these on phones. Open up a designer template. It doesn't matter which one you use because you can change any of them to look like any of the others. So, for instance, I'm going to click on the headline. It doesn't just because it says monthly newsletter. Don't let that freak you out. Just change that to thank you. go ahead and just delete this whole box. Take the next box, get rid of the headline, and then just start with Dear, insert name, and then you type in the same, anything that you would have had in the letter. Thank you for your gift of. Go up here to the button for Insert Bloomerang field. Type in the word amount. Yep, we got the second question here. Second time this question's come up, and I'm going to demonstrate. Yes, the answer is yes, but I'm going to make you wait till I get to it to just demonstrate how it works. So amount. Select that, and you've got you got the content you want here. Then just like the letter, and of course, all this other stuff is, like I said, it's completely editable. You don't like the green. Let's just highlight that and delete it, and then let's go ahead and, like I said, once again, we'll just use the insert image thing, and I'll put my logo in there. You can edit styles to change the color of the surroundings. Yeah, Bloomerang is going to put the $sign and the decimal point in there. So you don't want to put the $sign in your letter, or you're going to get a result that says, thank you for your gift of $2000 2000.00.00. So the amount is going to include your punctuation. So don't put that in the body of your letter, Tracy. All right. So the point is, this works the same way with your filter. Just like the letter, we're going to filter it the same way. We want transactions where the date is during the last 8 days. That's how we did it. We're going to get everybody since the last time we did this. And where the acknowledgement status is no. And then once again, so we've got 9 transactions in the last 8 days and have not been acknowledged yet. Here's who they're going to. If we go up and save and preview, email is going to say, hey, look, we found 9 transactions. Only 7 of those people have email addresses. And we're skipping one of those. And why? Because it's a bad address. Bloomerang does not recognize my fake email address for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is actually a character on Boston Legal. So this would find, even though we found 9 transactions, this email is only going to send 6. But if you said, okay, fine, let's send those 6, you go ahead and hit click send. I'm not going to do that. But what that's going to do, as Tracy was asking earlier, that's going to cause all of those interactions or those transactions to have their acknowledgement status changed from no to yes. And then if I go back and do my letter, second, then I've not sent that, but now if I ran this letter again, this filter, looking for transactions in the last 8 days that have not been acknowledged yet, there would only be those 3 left. Only the ones that did not receive the email. And in the long run, this is going to save you a lot of time and postage if you're cool with doing this. Thank everybody you can thank by email. It's free, or it's already paid for. And then all you got to do is follow up with hard copy letters to the people that you didn't have email addresses for. And over the course of a year, you're going to save probably hundreds of dollars in postage, but probably far more than that in time. All right. But like I said, and I'm still getting to the question about individually editing these letters. Yes, we can do that, but I don't want to show you until I've actually run the letters. I don't want to run the letter yet. I mentioned a minute ago how there's a handful of cases, like pledges and pledge payments and recurring donations and memorial gifts, where the basic letter that I showed you is not quite what you want. The ultimate solution is, if you get really sophisticated, is you might want a whole separate letter for every one of those cases, where the body of the letter actually addresses the complete scenario. That's an advanced level. And maybe you're already halfway there. What I'm going to show you next, though, is a really good intermediate step, and it's worth having if for no other reason. If for no other reason than maybe the one person who does your really, really excellent high-grade levels is on vacation for 1 week. And for that 1 week, you've got a fallback situation where somebody else can just get everything out with one series of clicks, instead of having to spend a day saying this person gets this letter, these 3 people get this letter, these 6 people get that letter, these 7 people get this letter. The next solution kind of addresses, I think, all of that. So what I'm going to do next is create yet another letter from scratch. And again, this is going to be a transaction-based letter, and I'm going to give it a name with an A in front of this, and I'm going to call this my A universal acknowledgement. The purpose of which is acknowledgement, and it's going to go one per household. And yes, I'm going to include blank and merge fields, and you'll see why. And yes, I'm going to include bad addresses because my Bloomerang sample database is full of imaginary people. So now I'll go to next, and I'll get my sample template here. In this case, I'm not going to waste the time showing you what I've already shown. You can change this however you want, change the margins, put your logo in. But what I want to do here is just get rid of this entire first sentence and replace it with a sentence that says something like, just thank you for your recent act of support, which can be anything. It can be a pledge, it can be a pledge payment, it can be a donation, it can be an in-kind donation. You're not specifying. And what you want to say here then maybe is, because we are a 501c3 organization, your donation is, instead of saying completely tax deductible, we're going to say tax deductible as documented below. Please keep this for your tax records, etc. Now, so what we're going to do here, instead of having a sentence or a paragraph in the middle of the letter that has the word donation in it when it's really a pledge, or that having something in here that says your donation is completely tax deductible, when in fact it's not completely tax deductible, we're going to address all of those things in the footer of this particular letter. So we're going to type in the word date, and then we're going to use the Bloomerang field to insert the date. Search for, there's all kinds of things with date. We're looking for transaction date. And then we're going to type in the word amount, and we're going to search for amount. Now the reason, we got to type the word in here. At this point, it makes sense. It's kind of intuitive that if there's a date here and an amount here, that's what we're talking about. But otherwise, they may not know. But here's what we're going to do. Now we're going to add one for type. Type. And here we're talking about transaction type. As search. Not constituent, but transaction type. This is where it's going to tell them it was a pledge or a pledge payment, so they're not confused. And then the next thing we might want to add here, and at this point we can actually jump ahead a little. This is where it's going to tell them that it was a pledge versus a pledge payment versus a recurring donation payment, and that we understand what they were doing. If this gift was a memorial contribution, we don't actually, if it wasn't, we don't really necessarily want to type in the word tribute type and then have blank, and the word tribute name and have a blank. All we've got to do here now, here, is just add the word tribute type space and then the name of the tribute person, the person for whom the tribute is directed. So if this is in memory of Antonin Scalia, it's going to show up. If this gift was not a tribute, nothing shows up and nothing's lost. A couple other things you might want to put in here. And sometimes I'll put these over on the right-hand side just so so we're not running this thing down the whole length of the page. But I'm going to scoot in a couple other things here. A very important thing you might want to add is the appeal that this gift was given to. Now, really, by and large, they're not going to care about that. They don't care about what activity you did that generated the gift, unless the gift was not entirely tax deductible. In that case, then you want to get another field here that says deductible amount. Oops. Well, first let's type in the word. I'll go ahead. So I'll go put my cursor in front of amount, put the word. So, if this gift was not completely tax deductible, first of all, you want to give them a document that tells them how much is tax deductible, but appeal is probably going to be what explains to them why. You don't want to send somebody a letter that says, thank you for your $1,000, $500 of it is deductible. If the appeal says it was a golf tournament or a gala, then that's going to give them the reminder they need. Because again, the day they get the letter, fine, they probably remember. But if they're just throwing this in their tax file and then they're pulling it out when they're doing their taxes, you don't want them to have to wonder, what was that $500 gift that I only got to deduct $200 off of? This tells them what that is. And so by putting all these things down at the bottom, you've created a situation where your letter doesn't have to be edited for each of 9 or 10 or 12 different scenarios. All this data is down here at the bottom. So now what we'll do with this, again, we'll go to the Filters tab. We're going to filter it the same way we've done everything else. Transaction date is during the previous 8 days. And acknowledgement status is no. Again, 10 transactions in that time period. If we save and, hold on. Acknowledgement status is, I didn't get no saved. No. Now, 9 transactions in the last 8 days that have not been acknowledged yet. Now if I go and save and preview, it's showing me we found 9 transactions, 9 households. We're not skipping anybody. We're generating 9 letters. Now I'm going to go ahead and run this and create my letters. The next screen I see is going to give me 2 buttons. The gray one lets me download the CSV file that I use to print my envelopes. The blue one lets me download the letters themselves. Click it once. Get the thing down, the download button down here. I open that up. And here I can see the letters say, thank you for your recent act of support. Here we're telling Ruth that yes, we recognize this is a pledge, and it's going to be entirely deductible. We scroll down to the next one, and we see Denise. We recognize that her $2,500 is a pledge payment. It's entirely deductible, but we're not making her wonder, did they count that against my outstanding pledge, or did they just put it in the bank and still think I owe $5,000? Keep scrolling down. Lori Colson. This is an outright. This is your typical outright donation. $100 donation. It's entirely tax deductible. Easy peasy. Here's Denny Crane. His amount was 0. The type was a donation. Oh, yeah, here's where I missed something. We should have put in method, which would tell them whether it was a check or an in-kind donation or a credit card donation, and we could have put in a field for in-kind description, where we could have said that his the goods that he donated were he donated a fishing trip to Nemo Bay for our silent auction. So yeah, I skipped one there. But essentially here, we see here that Katie Lloyd set up the recurring donation schedule. Shirley Schmidt gave that $100 gift that was in memory of Antonin Scalia because it had data in that field. Those things show up here, and it makes perfect sense without having to have some blank boxes here that have no responses behind it. So everybody else's letter doesn't have to say in memory of blank. It only shows up here if in fact it is indeed a memorial or tribute contribution. Here's the case of Alan Shore, who gave $1,000. That's what he's going to be reconciling his checkbook against. But when he sees that it's a gala, then he'll remember, all right, I bought a table. So it was, half of that money was going for food and wine. That's why my deductible amount was only $500. And here's Steve Rogers. Thank you for his monthly donation for his recurring donation payment from last week, from an earlier recurring donation. So we've looked at all these things. We can send this straight to the printer, or before we send it to the printer, let's answer another question. First of all, now that we've downloaded the letters, now let's go look at those transactions. Let's go look at Denise Bauer's record. Now she has not only on her record do we have her pledge payment, but we see that it's been acknowledged. The acknowledgement status has been flipped from no to yes. And here, in fact, we can even see the copy of the universal acknowledgement letter. Now, here's the other, the question that we've been asked twice, and I've lost my chat window. I hope it's still there. Everybody still there? Yeah, looks like no new questions since I closed the window. So here's where we had the question twice about, can you edit the letters? So once you have generated the PDF, but before you can go ahead and run. So 8 of the 9 letters are perfect. Go ahead and run those 8 and throw away just throw away the one that you don't use. Open this one up, and now you can look up not the entire 9-page PDF, but just Denise's record. And here was where you can kind of customize her letter by up at the top, you hit edit. That opens up all your edit buttons here. Thank you for recent. And here's where you can say, with this pledge payment, your remaining balance is now $2,500. Something like that. Here's where you can customize just this letter. You save it. And now that's what you're going to see in the future when you go back to her record. And you click on this, and you want to see the letter. You'll see that we've saved not the original PDF, but the edited version. And that's what's going to be here from now on. And once again, just as I explained earlier, with the very, very basic letter, you can do this exact same thing with an email template. So we could go into our existing email template, which is called a basic acknowledgement. And And we could make a copy of it, and we could change it to a universal acknowledgement. And do the same thing with it that we just did here. Just make the body of the letter, body of the email, thank you, insert the person who's signing it, and then all these things we just showed. Just do it again. Date, and pledge, date, amount, type, method. Since I forgot to do that before, let me real quickly. Just make sure this makes sense to everybody. What I missed before was before date. We should have the word date, colon, and then we will go method. And method, this is what's going to let them know that you made a record, that this was a check, this was a credit card payment, or that was an in-kind gift, which is what's going to make that letter to Denny that says, thank you for your gift of amount of 0, method of which is in-kind description, which will be blank if it's a check, but if it is an in-kind description, then it'll say thank you for your, there'll be a box here where it says, fishing trip to Nemo Bay. And then you do the same thing with the filters. This is going to people who have gifts in the previous 8 days who have not been acknowledged yet. Now, I ran the letter. So because I ran the letter, all those gifts got changed to yes, acknowledges yes, and so now there are no results. But it works the same way. It is almost 4 o'clock. Kathy's already saying goodbye. I'm going to let you all go, except for those of you who want to stick around for 4 or 5 minutes. I got a couple more things to show you, and I will stick around until your questions are answered. But that's the basic intermediate class. I did promise you a couple minutes on as a preview of the advanced class. I'll do that really quickly here and stick for questions. But essentially, you're probably ahead of the game on this. But if we were, the advanced way to do this, the high-end way is really, it's really cool. It's not a letter with a whole bunch of fields at the end of it, but it is, in fact, a thank you letter, where if we take our basic acknowledgement letter here, we'll just add a filter and say, I only want this to go to transactions where the date is this week and the type is donation, and the transaction has a tribute. And now I'm only finding the one gift from Shirley Schmidt that was in memory of Antonin Scalia. And now this letter can say, thank you for your donation. And then what you'll say is that you made on date, space, tribute type. And the tribute type gives you the choice between in memory of or in honor of. If it's obviously in memory of is somebody who's recently died. In honor of can be a happy anniversary gift for somebody who's not died. So he'd say in memory of, and then you would insert the name of the person that the tribute was associated with. And now this is in the body of the letter. That looks kind of cool, right? And if we save and preview, and why did we skip this household? We skipped this household because I have a bad address. So, yeah, I got to go back to make changes. go back to my details tab and say I'm okay with bad addresses. Save and preview. So now, this generates this letter. Then the next thing, then you just create every possible different scenario for a letter you might want. You may want to, we can make, first of all, make changes here. So the next letter you may want to have here would be for transactions where the type is pledge payment. And very rarely are pledge payments have a tribute. So here you've got only one transaction this week that was a pledge payment. But the body of this letter, you may want to say, thank you for your amount payment that you made on date on your original pledge of, and then here's, then you would insert pledge amount. And then you could say, your pledge balance is now, insert pledge balance. So I think you can kind of get an idea here. You change, you change the filters for each of the types of letters you might want to run. Then it doesn't really matter what order you run them in. Just run them. You run all of your acknowledgement letters for tribute gifts, and they've all been flipped to acknowledged statuses. Yes. Then do all your pledges, and they've been flipped to yes. Then do your pledge payments, and they've been flipped to yes. And you don't have to worry in that way about whether somebody might get two letters. But what you're doing is you're just writing a different body of the letter where you're inserting all the relevant fields into the body of the letter, and then you're filtering each of those letters by the type of the donation. Sometimes you're going to even want to say, thank you. I have a different letter to people who give to the capital campaign from their annual funds, so it's making sense that that they understand that this gift is being used specifically for the capital campaign and not just going to pay the light bill. So you might, there's all kinds of different ways you may want to do this, and like I said, there's a whole class on the various scenarios. Hal had a question about a letter to notify somebody. Yes, and so when you get a tribute gift, let's go back to Shirley's gift. So Shirley's gift, when she made the donation, we marked that it was a tribute. If we click on In Memory of Antonin Scalia, you'll see that there's a box over here for notificants. There's no information in here. But when setting the gift up, this is where you could say that notificant was. Now, here's a situation. This person has to, for you to send them a letter, they've got to be in Bloomerang. I don't know who. I don't have any names or anybody, but I do know that even though they are diametrically opposed politically, Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Antonin Scalia were really good friends. And so it may be that you want to let Ruth know that a gift was made in Antonin's honor. And so here's where you would create that she's the recipient. Now again, she's got to be in Bloomerang for you to have an address for the letter to do any good, but then you would create a whole separate letter with a whole different set. I mean, honestly, this is kind of more than we can get into at 6 minutes after the hour, but that's kind of that's the basic. And I would just recommend to dig in a little bit further, that you go up here to Help in Videos and search for tributes and look for solutions. So you go to you open up the help documents, and search for solutions. And then here's help documents here's a help document with HDV, help document video, on, probably it's going to cover the questions. It may take more here, more time than you and I can spend while others are on the phone today, but that's kind of some direction here. The other thing I want to make sure, if anybody's still on this call that doesn't see this yet, if you don't know this, my gosh, I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Most important button in Bloomerang is this question mark up here where you open a live chat online. Anytime between 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern Time on a weekday, we got people standing by to answer your questions. And that doesn't cost you anything. It's part of your basic. Yeah, so Paige's question about splitting between funds, that's almost certainly something where you're going to have to use the feature I showed you where you go back and edit the letter. I mean, to try to create a letter that automatically split the gift up, I would just generate the basic letter, and then, as we demonstrated, let's go back to let's go look up Ruth Bader Ginsburg's pledge and look at this thank you letter that we just sent her. And I would just edit her letter. I'd just do it here. Open her letter up and say, edit letter, as per your request, your donation, your pledge has been distributed equally between these funds, A, B, C, and D. I just think to try to create a single letter is going to anticipate every possible thing there. I think it's just more time than it's going to take to just edit her individual letter and manually say, we got $20,000 that we're crediting, that we're giving you a tax receipt for, tax acknowledgement for here, and we're using the body of the letter to make sure you understand that we did honor your request to distribute it equally among these funds. And with that, well, can you actually, it's possible to, I'm not quite sure exactly, Allison, what your question is here. Every donation in Bloomerang has to have only one fund and only one campaign and only one appeal, except to the extent that we've got this feature in here where if we were adding a new gift to my record, it is possible within a donation, once you've made a $1,000 donation to the unrestricted fund, you've got the option here to split a payment and then say, of this $1,000 payment, $500 of it is by check. I haven't saved it yet. So if I go back to my 1,000, it's possible to split a gift between multiple funds, multiple campaigns by using this action button. First we save the donation, and then $500 of it goes to one fund, and the other 500 to another fund. But there really isn't the thank you letter is still going to have to be manually edited the way that I was just demonstrating with Ruth Bader Ginsburg's pledge. Yeah, here we go. So split total is 1,000. This amount is 500 to the unrestricted fund. $500 remaining. The other $500 is as a donation. Now to the building fund. And now we've got well, when we split, tell you what, I need to stop the recording here so we can get this online, and I'll stick around and dig into this a little bit more. First of all, let me say goodbye to everybody who's still here. I hope this was useful, and you know, there is, again, feel free, if you got other questions, to use the question mark up here, either open a live chat or to go into help in videos. But I'm going to say goodbye for the purposes of this recording. Have a great, hey, Halloween and the rest of your week.